Welcome to the Twisted Tentacle Inn. I'm your Innkeeper, Vase Odin, and today we'll be ranking the wizard subclasses. The wizard is, in my opinion, the strongest class in the game. The subclasses allow wizards to do a couple of different things in different ways and makes wizards extremely versatile in any group. And today I'm going to be ranking the wizard subclasses that have been officially released by Wizards of the Coast. Keep in mind that I do think the wizard is the strongest class in the game, which means that even the weakest wizard subclass is probably going to be above average in terms of power level compared to other classes. Now, I just mentioned power level, but I am ranking the classes based on power level as well as some mechanics and flavor. The other thing that I'll be basing them on is the level 2 ability. That's going to weigh pretty strongly on my rankings because most people play between tier 1 and tier 2, and therefore they'll see that ability more often than, say, a level 14 ability. Now, some subclasses have a really bomb level 14 ability. In that case, that's going to weigh a little bit, but still, the level 2 ability, how useful it is from the early levels all the way through the higher levels, is pretty important because that's going to be kind of the bread and butter of the wizard subclasses. And last note, these are my thoughts. Your thoughts may be different. I've seen a few videos on YouTube ranking the wizard subclasses, and their list and rankings are way different than mine, and that's totally fine. Their groups may play differently. They may have different experience with those subclasses. So all of their thoughts on the rankings are completely valid, as are mine. And of course, I'm happy to hear any opinions as to why I'm wrong or some enforcement as to why one subclass may be a little bit better than I've ranked it. I'm open to suggestions and recommendations and hearing out maybe your anecdotal evidence. You might actually change my mind, so who knows? Leave the comments in the comments below and I'd be happy to look into it and see if maybe it does change my mind. Anyways, we're going to be starting with the worst of the lot. In this case, it's going to be Transmutation. So yeah, one of them had to be in the bottom, and in this case, it's going to be Transmutation. At second level, you get the Minor Alchemy ability. This one allows you to spend time to change a material into another material, so you can turn like wood into stone, and stone into wood, and that kind of stuff, metal into paper, whatever. You can't use it on a magical item, and you can convert 1 cubic foot for every 10 minutes that you spend on the procedure. It doesn't really specify that there's a limit, so that's kind of interesting. You do have to concentrate to keep the item changed, and it goes back to its normal form after 1 hour. Now again, it doesn't really specify, so you spend 10 minutes producing the item. I'm assuming it's once you're done, that's when the hour time period begins counting down, but who knows? I guess it's up to your dungeon master. Overall, this ability, I think it's kind of situational, and it's probably the worst of the level 2 abilities that the wizard subclasses have access to, and a huge reason why I've ranked this as the worst subclass. So at level 6, you get the Transmuter Stone. This one's a lot better. This one lets you create a magic stone, and it grants a magical benefit to anyone that holds it, that you give it to. So you get to choose what benefit is going to be in the stone when you first make it, and it takes 8 hours to make it. You can change the benefit whenever you cast a transmutation spell, so that's nice that you don't have to spend another 8 hours if you want to change the benefit that it gives. So clearly the best one is granting proficiency in Constitution saving throws, because you as a wizard don't have proficiency, so it's nice to have that, or you can give it to another party member that happens to be concentrating on spells a lot. Giving dark vision to a party member that doesn't have it is also pretty useful. The resistance to a damage type can be useful, a little situational, but overall I think the other two are better. This ability is fairly useful, but honestly it still pales in comparison to some of the other stronger wizard level 6 abilities. It's not the worst one that you get at level 6, but it's still, I would say it's pretty average. At 10th level, you get the Shape Changer ability. You can cast Polymorph an unlimited number of times, but you can only do it on yourself. You can only use it to change it into a beast creature type, and you can only be CR1 or lower. So all these, you can only, Clearly, anytime you get an ability that has so many limitations and stipulations, usually means that they end up being pretty situational. In this case, it makes this ability 100% a utility ability. At level 10, when you get this, you're not going to be finding much combat use in turning into a CR1 creature, especially a CR1 beast. It's really a weak ability for its level. Druids get a much better ability at a much lower level, starting at level 2 actually. It's not that it's bad, but at 10th level, you'd think that you'd get something with a little bit more oomph. This, to be honest, for a 10th level ability is fairly trivial. It has plenty of utility benefits, don't get me wrong, but I would say it's circumstantial. It would have probably been better if you gained it at level 6. The capstone for the transmuter is called Master Transmuter. You get the ability at 14th level. You can choose to use an action to destroy your transmuter stone and gain a benefit from a list. Basically, you can raise dead, you can cure poison, disease, or curses from a creature, you can make someone look younger but not extend their life, or you can change the material of an object no larger than 5 foot cube into a different material. Again, very situational, can be useful in the right circumstance, but overall it's kind of underwhelming. And especially for 14th level. None of the abilities, honestly, are anything to write home about. Let's just put it that way. So the Transmuter cements itself as the worst subclass for Wizard. The abilities that you gain are all pretty much really circumstantial, except for the Transmuter Stone. And even then, depends which one you make, right? So, and most of them are useful in very niche situations. So you're going to mostly find yourself not using them as much as you would abilities from other Wizard subclasses, and that's why the Transmuter makes the worst of the list. Second from the bottom, I've got the Bladesinger. I love this multi-class, but you really have to plan ahead carefully to truly make it work. Even with multi-attack, you're usually better off casting spells instead. Most of the time when I see someone playing a Bladesinger, it's because they're going to be multi-classed as opposed to running a single-class Bladesinger. I'd be lying if I said that the theme of this subclass really wasn't the reason that I didn't rank it last. So I know some of you really love the Bladesinger. I do too, to be honest. So please don't crucify me in the comments. Or you know what? Crucify me. It doesn't matter. But overall, I think the subclass kind of... the abilities clash with the abilities of that of a wizard, but we'll get more into it in just a second here. So breaking down the abilities, at level 2 you get light armor proficiency and proficiency in a one-handed melee weapon of your choice. The armor proficiency is really good for a wizard. Mostly wizards can't wear armor, so it's nice that you don't have to waste a first level spell slot casting mage armor. The weapon proficiency on the other hand is pretty bad, let's be honest. I mean, wizards are really fragile as it is, so even with light armor, they're really not good at staying in the front lines, especially at level 2. So using a melee weapon like, let's say a rapier, it's probably not what you want to be doing as a wizard. So especially when you have cantrips that can help you keep a distance and deal the same damage or better than what the weapon will do. And some of those cantrips have additional effects that will happen on your target that a weapon can't do unless you happen to have a magical weapon. So to make up for this lackluster ability, Bladesingers get an additional ability at 2nd level, and this one's called Blade Song. Now, this one's much better. So by spending a bonus action, you can get bonuses that last for a minute. This gives you an AC bonus equal to your intelligence modifier. You get an extra 10 foot of movement speed, and a bonus to concentration spells equal to your intelligence modifier. That bonus to concentration is probably completely the best part about this. You also get advantage on acrobatics checks. That's so. And you can use this ability twice per short rest. I think with the Tasha's book that's coming out, they're going to make it where you can use it a number of times equal to your proficiency modifier. Just a small change. So with this ability, now we can be a little bit more effective in melee combat. The AC bonus is pretty big. The bonus to concentration checks is huge. Your hit points are still pretty low, but something like a False Life first level spell can really help you with that. You're still not going to be doing the kind of damage that a fighter or a paladin or a barbarian can do at this level, but at least you're competent enough as a combatant that you can hold your own in melee. I compare like a level 2 Bladesinger to, say, a Bard in terms of their ability to stay in the front lines. So kind of in the middle. At level 6, you get extra attack feature. This one allows you to make 2 attacks instead of 1 when you take the fight action on your turn. This one is okay. You're going to be way behind on damage versus, say, a fighter or paladin at the same level, but 2 attacks is better than 1. The thing is that 2 attacks with a one-handed melee weapon against 1 foe is probably doing less damage than an area of effect spell against multiple foes. Plus, your cantrips are probably doing similar damage and getting more beneficial side effects still versus that attack. Of course, there's ways to maximize this. It takes some careful planning and specific tactics to make this thing work. If you're interested in making a effective Bladesinger using the spell Shadow Blade, that's a great spell to use as a Bladesinger. Check out the video. It's going to be linked up there and in the comments that I made on a Shadow Blade Bladesinger build. So check it out. I think you'll like it. At level 10, you get Song of Defense. This lets you use a spell slot to reduce damage taken by an amount equal to 5 times the spell's level. So this one sounds like it could be really, really handy on paper. But in my opinion, spell slots are far more precious commodities than 5 hit points, especially as you get to the higher levels. A 5th level spell slot to me is worth way more than 25 hit point damage reduction. So a level 5 spell can grant you so many more benefits than preventing 25 points of damage in most situations. Now, if you're about to be killed and this saves your character's life, then yeah, definitely use it. But I think that more often than not, you're going to find that you're using those spell slots to cast a spell is going to be a much better option than reducing damage. And the level 14 ability, the capstone, is called Song of Victory. So this one lets you add your intelligence modifier to damage dealt by your melee weapon, but only while your blade song is active. So that's, a stipulation there that kind of limits this already. It's already not a great ability. Getting an extra maybe 5 points of damage per weapon attack is nothing to write home about. But now it's also limited to only when you're using your blade song. So pretty lackluster. At most this is going to be 10 points of damage per round if you manage to hit with both attacks. As a 14th level ability, I think it should have at least granted a bonus to hit in addition to the bonus to damage. That would have been a little bit better. Plus, you have other wizards that are doing so much more at this level. It's kind of a head scratcher to see this ability as the capstone for the Bladesinger. So again, I'm going to emphasize this. The Bladesinger can work well if you're really good at planning your levels and you can maximize combinations of spells to help you achieve some great melee options. I know that some people use the Bladesinger mostly for the defensive abilities, and they just play it like a regular spellcaster and never go into melee, never use the weapon thing or the extra attack, which is fine. It's a completely valid way to build a Bladesinger and still get a little bit of benefit. But if that's what you're doing, I think there are far better options, like the War Mage, I think is a better option if you're mostly going to be using the subclass as defensive abilities. Anyways, the other thought I had on this, the fact that you're a full spellcaster, you're far more useful when you cast spells than when you're just attacking a single target. So there seems to be a major contradiction, and this is what I mentioned earlier, between what the subclass grants you versus the wizard as a class as a whole. So they're kind of clashing, and it doesn't seem to work as well as I think they intended it to. You can make it work, again, but it's why it's second to last for me. Graviturgy. What could have been one of the best control wizards is unfortunately very, very niche. I think if you want to play control, the Illusionist is a much better option, but it's a cool theme, so I don't blame you if you're looking into playing a Graviturgy wizard. And there is one ability that's super cool, but we'll get to it. One thing to note, this subclass was released in the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount book, and therefore is theoretically only allowed in that setting, but your Dungeon Master might allow this subclass in other settings. The thing with this subclass and another one called Chronergy, which we'll talk about a little bit later, is you also get spells that you can learn that other wizards are not really allowed to learn. So that's something that's interesting, and I am factoring into my ranking of this subclass. I'm not going to talk about the spells, but it is factoring into my ranking of the class. At level 2, you can affect an object or creature within 30 feet of you, and you can either half their weight or double their weight. So this lasts for up to a minute or until you lose concentration. So thematically, I think that this ability is pretty awesome, but mechanically, I think it's pretty mediocre. An increase or decrease of movement by 10 feet is nice, but it's not going to win you an encounter or anything of the sort. The added jump distance can be a little bit more helpful, but the strength saving throw advantage or disadvantage is pretty mediocre. There just aren't that many things that require strength saving throws. Let's just put that out there. The ability gets a little bit better at 10th level, where you can target a huge creature or smaller. That's nice, but as a whole, the ability is still not super great. And it uses your concentration, which, you know, as you get to higher levels, it's already kind of rough at level 2. But the more levels you gain as a wizard, the more great spells you're going to have that use concentration, and the more you're going to have to justify not being able to cast one of those spells because you want to use this ability to reduce movement by 10 feet. So something to think about, and something that really factored into my ranking of this subclass. At level 6, you gain the Gravity Well ability. So after you cast a spell on a creature, you can move them 5 feet in any direction, provided it's in unoccupied space. So the target has to either be willing, be hit by an attack roll required by the spell, or fail a saving throw required by the spell. Another very situationally useful ability. So my thought is that being able to move creatures around the board is tactically really nice, but the thing is that you have to nail them with the spell, and that makes this a little bit situational. The worst part is that the text is vague enough that it can be open to interpretation as to exactly how this works. I can totally see some dungeon masters interpreting this as requiring you to specifically target the creature with the spell. The text reads, and I'm going to read it verbatim, when you cast a spell on a creature, which means that a fireball, for example, that is a spell that is cast at a point within range, isn't necessarily a spell that's cast on a creature. So even if the creature is subsequently affected by the blast radius of the fireball, the interpretation can be that you didn't specifically target the creature. You targeted a point within range. So if your dungeon master thinks that this is how it's supposed to be read, I wouldn't fault them for that, and it makes this ability even worse. So something that you may want to speak with your dungeon master about before you pick the subclass, because there's a lot of spells that can affect creatures, but you don't necessarily target them. They're area of effect, or they target a point within range, or self and explode from yourself. So none of those would work if your dungeon master interprets this ability in that way. Anyways, at 10th level, you get the ability called Violent Attraction. So this one, you can use it a number of times equal to your intelligence modifier. It lets you grant an ally within 60 feet of you an additional 1d10 damage on a weapon attack, or if you cast it on a creature that's falling, if they take damage from the fall, then you can add another 2d10 damage to the damage that they take. The falling damage thing is extremely situational. I can't imagine this happening more than one time throughout the entire campaign, unless you're happen to be in a group where you're constantly shooting creatures up in the air and they're taking falling damage. Anyways, but the weapon damage is a nice addition to your damage output of your party. So I like that it uses your reaction instead of an action or a bonus action, because most of the time a wizard's reaction is spent on either counterspell, absorb elements, or shield, right? So these are all defensive moves. But say you're in a combat where there's no enemy spellcaster, no range attackers, no archers. What is your wizard doing with their reaction? Probably nothing. So it's nice that as a wizard, you're going to have this additional thing that you can do as a reaction that is not defensive. In fact, it can help boost the damage output of your party. So I do like the fact that it is a reaction and can be an offensive option. It gives you more tactical leeway as to the things that you can do with your reaction. So that part of the action economy becomes much more versatile in the hands of a Graviturgist. I also like that you can use it multiple times per long rest. That's also really nice. So at 14th level, you get the Event Horizon ability. Not only does it have the name of an awesome movie, and I know it's an actual phenomena, but the movie was great. So this one you can use once per long rest, or you can spend a 3rd level spell slot or higher to use it. This one is a really nice control ability. It's just too bad that it uses concentration. It's powerful in the right circumstances. So here's how it works. For 1 minute, as long as you're concentrating, hostile creatures that start their turns within 30 feet of you have to make a strength saving throw or take 2d10 damage and have their speed reduced to 0. The damage is very low for a 14th level ability, but that's not why you're using this. The speed reduction is what's awesome. Even if they succeed their saving throw, their speed is essentially dropped by 1/3 of their normal speed. I mean, that is control beyond control. My biggest issue with this ability is honestly the concentration requirement. It is a really strong ability, but at this level, you have so many options for your concentration that you're going to have to really justify why you're giving up the use of one of those spells in order to use this ability. Don't get me wrong, in the right situation, this is the right choice. No problem. But the fact that you even have to make that choice and you have to give up doing something else that might be pretty awesome instead of being able to do this and do something else that's pretty awesome makes this ability a little bit less strong. So overall, the Graviturgist has some pretty cool abilities, really interesting spells that no other wizard can take. It makes it a really thematic choice for players who want to play a wizard who's in control of gravitational forces around them. I just really love how this oozes theme. The thing is that this subclass lacks some mechanical oomph, and mostly because a lot of their abilities rely on concentration, or they're pretty situational, or just straight up underwhelming. So that's why the Graviturgist gets 3rd from the bottom on my list. So 4th from the bottom, this one's going to be a little bit controversial. Conjuration. This subclass is just situationally useful. The issue with Conjuration spells as a whole is that pretty much all of them use concentration. Now, teleportation is part of the Conjuration school, so most teleportation spells don't use your concentration, so that's nice. But actually summoning things to help you in combat is a little bit clunky in 5th edition. The abilities that you get with the subclass do help a little bit, though. And the new book coming out, Tasha's, not Tasha's Hideous Laughter, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. God, I cannot get the name of this book right. The Tasha's Cauldron of Everything book. This one's going to have some great new ways to use summoning, and I think that the designers of the game understood that Conjuration probably, or summoning spells in specific, needed a little bit of help. And so I'm glad that they kind of reworked them and are offering some great new summoning spells. So those spells, though, because all wizards can cast them, I'm not factoring into the ranking for this Conjuration school. So maybe when I do this video after trying out the new options for Conjuration, I might move this one up a little bit, but we'll see. As of right now, it just sits. That book is unreleased, so as of right now, the Conjuration school sits at 4th from the bottom for me. So let's go into their abilities. So at 2nd level, you get Minor Conjuration. This one is really situationally useful. It lets you summon an object that's no more than 31, or I can't read today. The ability you get at 2nd level, Minor Conjuration, is kind of situationally useful. It basically allows you to summon an object that is no more than 3 foot cubed and weighs no more than 10 pounds. And you can summon it on an empty spot on the ground within 10 feet or in your hand. It lasts for 1 hour, and you may be able to use the item to, like, say, block a doorway, or like while you're taking a short rest or something, or maybe to prevent a trap from going off, and just setting the weight on it or whatever. So again, just very situational things that I'm trying to come up with uses for it. Other subclass abilities at this level are generally better and useful in a bigger range of situations, and so this is a huge part of why Conjuration is kind of near the bottom of the list. At level 6, you get Benign Transposition. So this is a little bit more useful. You can teleport up to 30 feet to a space that you can see. It takes an action, which is unfortunate because the second level spell Misty Step is a bonus action. So Misty Step gives you more tactically beneficial options that you can use with it. But this ability has a couple of other benefits that could be useful at the right time. So first, you can swap places with a willing creature that's up to 30 feet away. So this can come in pretty handy in a ton of situations. So for example, you may have someone who's good at getting across a tightrope. So they get to the other side, and then you can swap places with them, and then they can go again and cross over. So it makes it easier for you to get across. Or you can run into an enemy camp, have them surround you, and then you can swap places with the beefy barbarian or whatever. Or if you're locked in a jail, you may be able to charm a guard and then make them willing to swap with you. So, a few great uses and kind of situational uses. And although you can only use it once per long rest, you can recharge a use of this ability by casting a Conjuration spell of first level or higher, so that's nice. So theoretically, you can have several uses of this throughout your adventuring day, and it doesn't really cost you any resources to do so. At level 10, you get Focus Conjuration. So this one's pretty good most of the time. You can't lose concentration by taking damage. This one seems like a really strong ability, especially when you cast summoning spells, because a lot of them require concentration. I like the concept for this ability. It sounds really strong. But think about the last time that you played a game where characters were level 10, and how many times during that did your wizard take damage more than once in a combat? It's probably not that many. So even less likely that it's enough damage for you to actually fail your concentration check. And so add to that as a Conjuration wizard, you probably have teleport, and you can probably teleport like most other, or more than most other characters. So you can get away from dangerous situations. And the fact that you probably have a few pets and stuff that can get in the way of enemies that are coming at you. So your summoned creatures can help defend you. So in my experience, the biggest drawback of concentration spells is not that taking damage can break your concentration. That rarely ever happens in my games. In fact, it's mostly the player characters that make enemy spellcasters lose concentration. But player characters themselves are pretty good about making sure that concentration is maintained. I think that concentration's biggest drawback in this game is the fact that you can only concentrate on one spell at a time. That's actually far worse than the danger that you might actually lose concentration, I think. So personally, I think this ability would have been much better if you could concentrate on 2 Conjuration spells at once instead of the ability that it currently is. Because as it stands right now, it's nice that you don't have to worry, but the worry a lot of times is unfounded, and therefore this ability is not as useful as you may think. I hope that you understand what I'm trying to say here with that. So again, it's just a really cool ability. It's just that in practice, you probably won't be using it as much as you think you might. So finally, at level 14, your summoned creatures get an additional 30 hit points. By level 14, this is not a whole lot, but it is significant enough to allow a lot more survivability for your summoned creatures. So one thing I've never heard anyone mention about this ability, that it's Conjuration spells, summoning spells. So a spell like Find Familiar applies, actually. So you actually are the only wizard who can have a familiar with like over 30 hit points and can take more than one hit without dying. So that's pretty interesting that you can do that. But to be honest, overall, this ability, for being a 14th level ability, kind of pales in comparison to the ones gained by its peers. So the reason I don't rate Conjuration much more highly is that the abilities of other subclasses are just much more useful. The abilities of the Conjuration wizard sound amazing on paper, but I think that in practice you'll find that something like, say, the level 6 ability is really the only thing that is going to be really impactful in your games on a regular basis, but the other abilities are pretty much going to be pretty circumstantial. Also, you'll find that the biggest issue is that the wizard summoning spells are just not as useful as the druid summoning spells. And I mentioned earlier, Tasha's is coming out, and there's going to be much better choice for summoning spells for wizards, so that's going to help a lot, but that is not being factored into this ranking because other wizards are going to be able to cast those spells too. So, you know, overall, I think that they make the conjurer seem like it's the summoner wizard, you know, but overall it doesn't really play out that way. I think that the druid plays better as the summoner wizard than the wizard does. The wizard, the conjuration wizard is more like a general or broadly generic wizard that relies on summoning and teleportation a little bit more than others, but along with other things that they do. So again, I think I've made my case on the conjuration wizard and why I've ranked it so low, fourth from the bottom. But if you disagree, I would love to hear about it in the comments, because hey, again, you might change my mind. So, well, who knows? All right, so that does it for the bottom 4. And in the next video, we'll be talking about the middle subclasses, the ones that I think are pretty average. Don't excel, but aren't the worst. So check out the next video for that, and then the final video will be the top wizard subclasses that have been officially released. So stick around for that. I'll post those links in the comments as soon as those videos are uploaded. So in the meantime, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, anything like that, feel free to put them in the comments down below. And don't forget to subscribe. It really helps the channel a lot. You know, share the video, sure, yeah, that's nice. But subscribing is what helps the channel grow. And hitting the like button, it doesn't affect analytics like people think. If you hit dislike, it doesn't affect me in any way. So if you feel like hitting dislike, do it. I don't care. The thing is, the like button is for me, right? The like button, if you hit like, it tells me that this is the type of video that you want to see more of. So if I have a video with 1,000 likes and a video with 50 likes, I am more likely to make more content that is similar to videos with the 1,000 likes. So that's why it's important. It's so I know what you like, so I know what more things to make. Anyways, all right, enough rambling about the channel. Thank you guys for checking out the video, and I will see you in the next one. As always, I am your Innkeeper, and this is the Twisted Tentacle Inn. Check in anytime. I'll talk to you then. Yeah, in the right circumstances, it can be pretty powerful. This one is very situationally useful. It basically allows you to summon an object that is no more than 3 foot cubed and weighs no more than 10 pounds. You can summon it on an empty spot on the ground within 10 feet of your hand. Gosh, Jesus Christ.